Well, good morning everyone and welcome to Breakfast with Evo. I'm back down in the park. It's a much better day today, a lot less wind, so I can talk to you sensibly without getting all that wind interference in the microphone. Today we're looking at a question from Nick Poland. Thanks for your question, Nick. Nick sent this in a little while ago, but due to the backlog of stuff that I've been getting through, today's the day. So Nick, your day today and your question was all about spin and how we get spin on the golf ball and control that spin when we're hitting into greens. So today we're going to find out about all there is to do with spin, how to stop your ball on the green, and maybe how not to. So let's have a look at that now. Keep watching right to the end because there's going to be lots of useful information today about how to control your ball in any circumstance that you find yourself in on the course. Well, creating spin on your golf ball is dependent on a number of factors. The first and most important being the lie. If your lie is too grassy and there's interference at the back of the golf ball so that the club face can't contact the ball, then I'm afraid we can't get the ball to spin at all. So you're already getting a little bit closer as to what reacts with the ball to make it spin. No close contact, no spin. And you'll find this out of rough. So a huge tip to start with, when you're playing from rough into greens, remember that your landing distances should change because your ball just won't stop. A 200-yard shot to a green can often become a 160-yard shot to a green. Lands, bounces on hard ground, top spin only, it's got no chance of stopping, and it's up to you to judge how much it runs out. So that's a very important step as well. So the lie is hugely important. Step two, the ball you use. The ball you use is absolutely critical. If you don't use a ball with a soft cover, one of the premium M balls, I'm afraid to say that the other Sirlin covers, they're probably a little bit too hard, as is the construction of the ball. Most top-end balls are multi-layer construction. That means that they're able to generate more and more revolutions, and that's the important part of actually getting your ball to stop. So part two there is hugely important. You have to use a premium ball, and you should really talk to us in the shop if you're not actually getting the right kind of grip on your shots. Third, the club you're using. This one here, I haven't had too long. The grooves are really sharp. They're going to do a good job of getting grip on that golf ball, you know, from a decent lie. So the ball is contacting all the grooves, and that's the important thing. People come into me and say to themselves that their wedges are absolutely fine, whereas I'm cringing looking at the faces. They could be 10 years old. You think they're 5 years old, they're not, they're 10 years old. You think they're 2 years old, they're not, they're 5 years old. I go through 2 or 3 sets of wedges every single year, and that's not because they're given to me. The ones I get additionally to the first set that I receive from Mizuno, I have to buy. So it's important for me to have the right wedges, because if I've got no grooves and the grooves are closed down or worn out, that's also going to cause problems and not get the grip I really should. And you'll see that if you get a new wedge and strike the ball really well, you'll see how much more spin you get with that club than you did with your old ones. So there's 3 incredibly important factors. Now we'll go on to conditions that are outside our control, like ground conditions, wind conditions, and all the rest of it. Let's take a look at that now. Well, ground and wind conditions obviously play a major factor in whether your ball is going to spin a lot or not spin at all. Hard ground, green surfaces are very firm, green surfaces are soft, medium soft. You'll know after playing a couple of holes. The consistency of the course is good, and then obviously you'll know for the rest of the way around that you should be playing the ball for either lots of spin, some or none. Downwind, you haven't really got much of a chance, because when that ball creates its first bounce, the wind is obviously taking the spin off the ball, turning it into forward spin, if you like, when it lands, and again you're not going to get the control. Downwind, that's what's going to happen. Against the wind, what's going to happen? The ball is going to generate more and more and more revolutions. The wind into your face is making the ball spin more and more and more, and when it lands, it won't want to go forward at all. That's the equivalent of hitting a drop shot in tennis, where you create lots of backspin, ball gets just over the net and stops dead or even comes back towards you. Other ground conditions to take into factors: are you landing on a downslope? Are you landing on an upslope? I know lots of you that pitch into the 17th green, me included. You can get caught out by hitting a fantastic shot, takes one bounce, skips up to the flag, pulls back, and once it gets on that slope, it's almost off the green. And the reason why is because the ball has now reacted, not only with the wind, but also with the slope that it's landed on. That wants to make it come backwards more, and of course going the other way. If you land on a downslope, it'll make it want to shoot forward. Those are the contributing ground factors that we need to look at. So remember, you need to take all of this into consideration before you play any shot. Wow, it looks like a really angry sky behind me. So let's get on with this and show you how to get some spin on the ball. So we've already mentioned the factors, tight lie in particular. We certainly like the fairways mown as short as we can. I don't like fluffy long fairways, and now you can see why. It stops me from being able to get good grip on the ball. I know a lot of you may like the grass on the fairways to be a bit longer, because that makes it sit up and a bit easier to hit. For this shot, I've taken on my 58-degree wedge, and I'm happy with that. But remember, because this is a short golf club, it does tend to sit at a very steep angle, and that will make your swing for this particular shot very steep indeed. So we've got to be careful in this situation now not to dig the club into the ground, because that's the last thing that we really want to do. So to make sure that we actually don't dig the leading edge of the club into the ground, let's take a look at that now. We're going to look at that leading edge. We don't want that to be digging into the ground. We're actually going to open the club face slightly on this wedge, and we're going to use the bounce to come through the ground, and we're going to use the bounce to actually keep the club above ground. So what we don't want is the leading edge to be digging in. We actually want the leading edge to be slightly up, not to thin the ball, slightly up, to use the bounce so that we keep that club floating along that grass, and that's the way that we're going to generate the most spin on the ball. So I'm actually going to be able to get the club onto the ball, contact the ball first, and then let the ball slide up the club face, strike it really well. If you've ever been in a fairway bunker that doesn't have a particularly high lip, you've probably been able to strike that ball, back of the ball first, comes out with loads and loads of spin, lands on the green, stops dead or pulls back. And remember, we're after the same principle, pure contact. Ball is contacted by the club first, then the club comes through without digging into the ground. So the motion isn't steep and down. The motion, in fact, is steep but shallow through the golf ball hitting area, and that's what's going to make you create the most spin. So we've mentioned now that the golf club has a steep shaft angle, and remember, if we create a full wrist hinge, we've created even more angle in the shaft. Not good. That'll make it even steeper. So if I get myself into this position here and really feel like I've hinged my wrists, as I should do with most other shots, the club is coming down from a steeper angle, and all of a sudden I could find that leading edge digging in even more. So remember now, what I actually want to do now is to make sure that I use a lot less wrist hinge. I'm going to call this a wooden swing. It's a feeling of the arms and shaft remaining in a straight line together, and what that's going to do is going to help the club stay closer to the ground, although it's a steeper shaft. And if I hinge my wrist, remember, the club head is coming up very quickly, whereas if I keep my wrists firm, you can see that the club head in the same arm position stays much lower to the ground. We're going to have this feeling of wooden through the swing, and that's really going to help us to use the body more rather than to go at it with the arms. Let's have a look at a couple of shots now. I'll hit a normal one first, then I'll slow one down for you. You can see the difference in those two swings. So the first one here I'll do now is the one with the full wrist hinge. Let's have a look at that. I use the ball from the center of the stance and just watch the wrists hinge. I could really see how much steeper that was there. As I came down and threw the ball, you can see how the club has dug into the ground, and that's not really the type of strike that I want with this shot. Let's have a look at the same swing now at normal speed, but what we're going to do is we're going to take that wrist angle out, and we're just going to use that wooden swing, which means that the club head will stay closer to the ground the whole time. Let's take a look at that now. Same setup, no changes to that whatsoever. Ball closer to the middle of the setup, and now from there, let's have a look at that wrist position, and you can see how I'm not hinging my wrist. Let's give it a go. Well, absolutely no ground whatsoever. Really clipped that ball, and that one would have been spinning quite a lot, even though I'm actually slightly downwind in this position. So you've seen the difference between those two. Let's slow them down, and now let's have a look at them in slow motion so you can see the difference in those positions. Well, okay, I hope you've seen the difference there in those slow motion shots of those two swings. One, lots of hinge, makes it too steep, digging into the ground. Second, much shallower because I'm not hinging my wrist as much. That keeps it nice and wooden. I can draw the club across my body, use the bounce to get the ball struck properly and running up those grooves that we know are good, and that's what's going to get you all that spin. Remember, there's loads and loads of things to take into consideration, and remember those ground conditions, the wind factors, your club, the ball you use, the lie you have. There's lots and lots of information before you play that shot to get the best results, and it's about translating all that information into one decent result. We're going to finish off this session today. We're going to have a look now what I would do by hitting shots different distances. So you can see that I'm using that wooden swing in this situation. Well, how do I get that to go as far as you want it to go? Well, it's up to you to make that decision. But remember, all I do is use the same swing, but then I use different speeds to create those shots. So let's have a look at one that goes 20 yards. Nice tight lie, club face slightly open. Now you'll see the wrist nice and wooden, so my rotation is literally now much slower. Same swing, much slower rotation. I don't use my hands and arms to create the speed. I'm going to use that rotation. Let's have a look at the one that goes 40 yards. And that was nice. And then I can increase it, and with this club for me, I can probably get that shot to still go around 100 yards. It's up to you to practice that one. I hope you've enjoyed Breakfast with Evo today, and Nick, I hope that answers your question on how you're going to get your ball to spin. Lots to think about, and remember, fire me an email if there's something that you didn't understand, because you can see how many factors that you've actually got to get right for this to work properly. Press the subscribe button, give us a like if you can. I'll see you tomorrow with another video. Stay safe everyone, see you tomorrow.